waiting for something to click and show them the new direction.
Superheroes were put aside except for Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, the only clean superheroes that were left. So in America, I, as an art student who was thinking of becoming a comic book artist, grew up in a vacuum of comic books dying, just withering and dying and going away. The heroes of my youth were disappearing. And then at DC Comics, they decided to do The Flash, and they decided to do Green Lantern. And those of us out there who were paying attention to everything because we were like sponges saw superheroes start to come back. And we didn't believe it. It really couldn't possibly be. But they were very clean superheroes, like Superman, very nice and very handsome, and they only fought really, 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 really bad guys and aliens from space. But it was the beginning. It was the beginning of maybe comic books would come back.
They brought The Flash back, a more modernized version of it, edited by Julia Schwartz and done by John Broome, Bob Kanigher, and Carmen Infantino. And that started to click, but it didn't really show a major trend. And then Fantastic Four #1 came along, and the whole industry changed. That was a watershed book that suddenly told the readership, there's a new era born. It's a good time to start reading comics again because we're doing something different.
In 1961, the appearance of the Fantastic Four marked the great beginning of artist Jack Kirby's partnership with writer Stan Lee, newly appointed editor of Timely Comics. Working for this publisher, Kirby and Lee gave new life to the great heroes of the Golden Age and also created a host of new, tremendously popular characters, from the Incredible Hulk to the X-Men.
The books sold very well, and I said, we've started a whole new type of stories now, and we have a whole new group of fans. So I thought, let's give the company a new name, and I picked Marvel Comics, and that's how it happened.
When I saw my first Marvel comic, it was, of course, a breath of fresh air. Very different approach. It was jazzier, snappier, more colorful, and the characters didn't take themselves so seriously. Marvel, people got dirty and messy, and maybe it was the effect of all of them having to be mutants of some sort as opposed to superheroes. They just seemed to have more fun adventures.
Well, fans out there looked at these characters and saw a difference. What was the difference? Well, DC Comics did shiny new American heroes, all white, all pretty, all doing good deeds. Marvel Comics turned their monsters into heroes, and suddenly it would be a totally different type of superhero. That doesn't mean, from my point of view, that makes DC Comics unimportant. It's simply a totally different look at heroes.
Easy. That's it. Nobody's gonna hurt you. It's okay. It's okay. That's it. Can you understand me? Can you understand me? Can you speak?
We had these very dumb origins for most of the superheroes who came along in the late 50s, early 60s. They were mostly created by accidents and nuclear double talk. They were created by gamma rays, by people who really weren't sure what gamma rays were, but it sounded real neat in the story. And the audience at that point was bombarded in the news with stories about nuclear testing and nuclear experiments and accidents, and they kind of just accepted the concept that, oh yeah, I guess gamma rays can create superheroes as well.
What was the Fantastic Four? It was a monster comic book. You had 4 people going up into space. They were hit by cosmic rays. One of them came down as a monster. One of them came down as somebody who lit on fire. One of them came down as somebody who could create force fields and become invisible. And one of them came down as somebody who could stretch himself out of shape. From the Marvel timely point of view, those were 4 monsters. And those 4 monsters became heroes.
People keep asking, between the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby team, who did what? I got to work with Stan, I got to work with Jack. I found that it was very difficult for even them to discern it. Obviously, Jack did the drawing. Obviously, Stan did the dialogue. The concepts, the basic ideas, the plots, the underlying philosophies, the characters came from both. And not always from the one you would think. People assume, oh, well, Jack came up with the cosmic visions and Stan came up with the human traits and personalities. And what I found was that some cases it was the exact opposite.
In the beginning, I would give him detailed outlines of what the story should be. But after a very short time, we would just talk for 5 or 10 minutes. I would tell him who I wanted the villain to be and what I wanted the problem or the menace to be. And then I'd let Jack go and draw it any way he wanted to. And he would add so much to the story with his artwork. And then he'd give me back the drawings, and I would put in the dialogue, and I'd put in the captions. So it was a true collaboration. We both really worked on those stories.
The synthesis of the 2 creators created just an amazing number of characters and premises that just were fantastic. I think Stan, with Jack, created a method of working, this sort of the Marvel way of working, where a writer would write a plot and then the artist would really freely interpret that plot, and then the writer would script it again, and that's still being used, by half the industry today.
During his partnership with Jack Kirby, Stan Lee also worked for Marvel Comics with many other talented artists or writers. Mary Severin, Steve Ditko, John Buscema, Roy Thomas, Gene Colan, John Romita, Neil Adams. Each made a distinct contribution, and the team they formed was highly productive. Daredevil, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, Iron Man, there seemed to be no limit to the new series. Stan Lee tailored the scenarios to fit the world of his young readers, and very soon the teens of the 60s began to feel involved in the problems of identity or integration into society encountered by these heroes who were so different.
I would like to think the main difference between